Any pressing questions to kick off with you?
I have a question, if it's possible.
Yeah.
The book that you were reading, you were reciting everything. Did that come from you, your own words, or that came from someplace specific?
That's from my mentor, Ralph Sarchi, provided me hopefully a exorcism that he would use on all the cases that he would consider a legitimate demonic investigation of the house.
So those are things that he actually wrote himself?
No, those are prayers. Those are actually pre-made prayers from the Pope Leo exorcism prayer that he would use just for demonic investigation. So I'm allowed to perform an exorcism ritual on a location. I can't do it on a person. That would be a solemn exorcism. I'd have to be a traditional Catholic priest, approved, obviously. So that's the way he would always approach his paranormal cases, the demonic nature, and that's the way he had mentored me to do so as well.
Very good.
Yes? I was going to add 2 questions. So in the beginning you were talking about an app that you use as a EVP, like substitute kind of. What was that app called?
Yeah, it's called Hauntedhouse. So it's a free app, and when I first started investigating the paranormal, some friends were using it. They were sending me audio messages, and I started to notice really clear, audible EVPs occurring on them. So then I just started sending messages to myself, and amazing EVPs comes through it. So I've been using it on and off throughout the years as well. It's something, one of those unexpected things that wasn't used, or the purpose to be, for it to be not an audio messaging app, but actually using it for paranormal reasons. But yeah, I've gotten a lot of evidence with doing my friends. I've spread a lot of friends using it as well, and they've got some really good stuff too.
Sorry, I'm downloading it now. So looking back on how you started investigating the paranormal, how did you start versus how would you now recommend looking back someone start learning about how to communicate in the way that you do?
Sure. Well, how it started for me was kind of like by mistake. I always watched paranormal documentaries, and I loved this stuff. I was a horror movie buff as a kid. I was reading Stephen King novels in grammar school, so that doesn't tell you a little something. Funny enough, the only movie that would give me nightmares as a kid was The Exorcist. Go figure, because that's what I do now. Not until like my late-ish 20s, I was waitering at a restaurant, and a friend of mine was probably the biggest skeptic ever. I always make the joke that if he levitated off the floor, he would send himself to the hospital because he thinks he's hallucinating or something. I wanted him to have an experience, so we'd always joke around like, all right, we're going to go out to a cemetery one night. So I got him to come with me to a local cemetery in New York where there was like a lore of 3 women in white that would chase you out of the cemetery. So we're walking around. Now I had a flip phone. It was right before smartphones came, and I was just recording audio. And you know what's interesting is that these flip phones had a very crappy audio quality to it, but actually, if you know in the paranormal field, that some of us in the paranormal field will use white noise generators because the white noise actually helps the amplification of the EVP, electronic voice phenomena. So I didn't know, obviously, at the time, but I was just recording audio to see if I get something, and I had a very defining moment for myself. I was in front of this little girl's grave, and her name was Jenny. I think she was like between 8 and 10 years old, and I asked her if she's still here, and I just remember this moment that I thought I heard something, like something, but I'm like, whatever. And I was walking around the cemetery, and I was asking questions, and then not until the next night, I just decided to listen back, and that's when I wasn't prepared for what I was actually going to hear. You hear a little child say, like, my 2 toys died, in a child's voice. Very, very unsettling, creepy. And then I started listening to other EVPs throughout the night, and you actually hear someone say muerto, which is Spanish for death, and just voices speaking all over the place. And it's just that moment. It's not me just watching a TV show, or any of us, like we're watching a show, like, oh, I don't know, this is BS. And these days, it's a lot easier to say BS because, unfortunately, there is a lot of fakery out there, and people doing it for the wrong reasons and stuff. That's why I always recommend for people to have a first-hand experience yourself, because if you have no rational explanation for your experience, that means it's unexplained. That's why we call it the unexplained, and that's why people like myself have these types of experience and actually get drawn into this and get interested in it, because there is something to it, and that's why here I am almost 14 years later, I'm talking about it right now. But actually, 2 to 3 weeks after my initial night at the cemetery, I saw a shadow of a little girl at the corner of my bed. It was even light out. It wasn't even dark out. And I was like, you know, I think anyone would. It was just like a cutout of a little girl. It just disappeared, and that was really the beginning of the crazy ride. So I started wanting to. Obviously, I was scared, but I was also exhilarated, excited. I was like, oh my God, it's real. It's real. It's like that's. It's kind of funny. I was watching all these paranormal documentaries for so many years. I'm like, I could have just walked to a cemetery and had an experience so easily. It's like right there. It's right there. But within that process, I do believe it triggered my spiritual awakening at the same time. I mean, obviously, I believe that we all have psychic gifts to some degree. You have to realize that you are a spiritual being as a core. You know, we are a spiritual being living a human experience. It's not the other way around. That's what I believe, why there are a lot of ghosts. Ghosts really are human souls that once lived in the physical plane. And for whatever the reason is, they're lost within themselves. Are they, attached to a location, an object? Was there a tragedy associated with their death where they feel like they were robbed of their life, or the person that committed the crime that led to their death? Maybe there's not justice. There's so many diversified reasons why a ghost, what we call a ghost, may be stuck in some way. And obviously it's been a reoccurring theme too, just like this story here of praying for spirits and spirits coming to me asking for help. I've had some just astounding stuff. But to take it back to also what I would recommend for anyone wanting to get interested in the paranormal is to read some books. The first few books that I read, the first book ever was the Ellen Ray Warren book, The Demonologist. It's very easy to read, and they talk about some of their extreme cases. I think The Conjuring is in that book specifically, among other cases, and I think even the next Conjuring movie is from that book. But it really helps you formulate, kind of like incorporate with your own way you want to approach it. Obviously, I was brought up Catholic and spiritual, so I'm approaching it from that standpoint. I don't judge anyone as a different belief system than I do, but again, for me, it's just like I've had so many experiences now that's kind of validated. For me personally, my faith, I've seen evil spirits react negatively to things of religious significance over and over again. So that's why I pray, and I wear a Blessed St. Michael pennant around my neck right now. I mean, like, that's why I don't mess around, because, it's working. Because I can't fight these things with my fists or a gun or something. So it's not a physical muscle, it's a spiritual muscle. So, I mean, whatever works for you. I mean, however you guys want to approach it. But, I mean, obviously I approach it from that way. But, yeah, I would read books on things from pioneers of the paranormal field when it wasn't cool to be on TV for ghost stuff. That, people were really out there for the research. Like Ralph too, like he was out there, read his book became Delivers from Evil, the movie, but obviously there was a lot of Hollywood influence in there when movies, but if you read his book, he's got some astounding stories of cases, crazy cases that he's been on. It really helped me to figure out the worst case scenarios of the types of cases you can go on, and most importantly, how these things can attack you. That's probably the most delicate nature of the paranormal, is the way that they can actually create an amplification to any sort of negative emotion that a human being has. So if you have any depression, sadness, or anger, or rage, they can just take something that's a little bit in the back of your mind subconsciously and blow it up to the point where you ultimately would want to hurt yourself or others. And then on top of that, there's no conception of time in the spirit world. We're in a world right now where our bodies get old, but our energy within us that's energizing his bodies to walk around, that never dies. So where does that energy go? But in the meantime is that when we open up that door and we walk into what I like to call spiritual rules of engagement, where these things are actually allowed to come into our lives because we're, opening up that door somehow, then we have to deal with that, and now how are you going to deal with that when it comes to being prepared for that? That's why it's really good to have a realization of how these things can influence you subconsciously. Now, you could invite them in from something that you do tonight in the middle of any random haunted place, and now provoking too, and I know people that do that sort of thing. I know people that do Ouija boards. I don't mess with that. I was influenced to mess around the Ouija board once, and I got oppressed by an evil spirit. It is no walk in the park, and I'll never do that again. I've never advised people to do that, but everyone has their free will, and sometimes people got to learn the hard way, But I've been on a case. I'll give you an example. Where a couple, they told me to come to their home, and they were experiencing some dark stuff in their house. And, I was down in the basement, and we had the spirit box on, and I had a vision of a woman in a white dress, and she's waving her hand. She's like, "They took my babies." And all of a sudden, right after that, it said Ouija through the spirit box. So I went back up to the parents and I'm just like, hey, you know, I know you haven't done anything paranormal, but like it's mentioning Ouija board. I mentioned this lady in white, like waving her hands, you know, they took my babies, and they turned white and were just like, actually, like about 30 years ago in high school, when they were high school sweethearts, they played with the Ouija board and they went to some cliff where people go make out or whatever, you know. And right after they played with the Ouija board, they were up there and they saw this lady in white waving her hands, and they heard her say, they took my babies, and she disappeared and never saw her again. So my interpretation is that many years ago they opened up that door, and then that spirit followed them, but then there was also something else happening in their house, is that their 10-year-old boy was being visited by a hooded shadow with red glowing eyes telling him to cut himself. So that's I'm just providing another example of how something could happen decades earlier, and then you have no clue it has something to do with the paranormal. But these things have a huge advantage because they know when it's going to be the perfect time to strike, when it's going to be a dark time in your life where you're going to be struggling and things are going to be so easily distracted by the things that are going around you. They can actually sit there with that invitation open and start to mess with you subconsciously from the shadows and get what they want out of you, negative energy. A negative spirit wants negative energy. So that's just to give you a kind of a little picture of what these things are capable of. And if you decide to get into paranormal, being aware of that and knowledgeable of that fact is going to help you avoid collision with those types of situations in the future, or any place that you go. You always have to be aware of your surroundings.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Also technically two questions.
Sure.
Is there such thing as a positive attachment to somebody, and how do you know if you have a positive or negative attachment to yourself?
Well, you know what's funny when people say attachment all the time? It's like, there's spirits that follow me everywhere, and I feel like it's funny. Like I have some lady female that follows me everywhere, and she's from another brothel in like upstate New York. It's a place known as Shannon Hotel. I wrote about in my second book. And it's funny, and she just comes through all the time. She flirts all the time. Oh, I'm your girlfriend, and she gets kind of like sassy, if you get my drift. And it's kind of comical, but I mean, I wouldn't really call that an attachment. It's kind of like, to me, like someone's just following me. But to me, like attachment is almost like, it feels like almost like a parasite type of, term, you know what I mean? So when someone says attachment, I'm like, all right, so what are they doing to you? Like, are they influencing you? But I mean, most of these spirits are human souls, so it's dependent what type of energy they represent. So if they are like some sort of negative presence, or if they were tormented in life and they're really sad and depressed because of something and they're around you, then it could actually be an environment when you're around that spirit so much where their emotions become your emotions. So then you could actually end up being the same status emotionally, energetically as the spirit. And it's the same as if you moved into a house where an emotional event took place and where deaths or sadness are, and if that energy is retaining in that property and it's somewhere in that location, and you live in it long enough, it will. Yes?
I have a question for Billy, actually. As a skeptic, what made you want to produce and direct a whole movie on paranormal investigation?
Well, so we actually shot that in January of 21, right?
Yeah.
So coming up on 3 years when we actually shot it, and when we shot that, I've done like a lot of narrative movies that I've written and directed, and I've done a couple other documentaries, nothing in the paranormal field per se, but my narrative movies were horror films, so kind of along the same lines. And the paranormal at that point, I'd gone to this other house, the guy Dave Spinks that was in that, he owned, I don't know if he still does, but Willow's Wheat house. So I'd been there a couple of times with him, or maybe once, in that house. A lot of bad stuff in that house. So
Another bad place. And
Yeah.
you can actually watch more about that. It's on another show on Netflix with William Shatner, The Unexplained. The first episode, you'll hear about that Willow's Weep.
yeah, and then we actually ended up producing a whole documentary for ScareNetwork on Willow's Weep as well. It's on the platform too. But about a week before they were going back to this house, Dave called me and he's like, "Hey, we're going back to this house. Me and Sean were there 5 years earlier. Would you be available to come and stay a few days and film it and put it together?" And I was searching for new projects at that time, so I was like, yeah. I would. But to that point, the paranormal stuff is, I've always been interested in it, but it's something I've never really kind of like wrapped my head around and really given much thought. I was very naive in the fact, and what I mean by that is when we got to that house, you know, I'm a very visual person, so I was like, well, you know, I'll just walk down in the basement with my camera and I'll just film a ghost, you know, that being naive like that.
If only it was that easy.
I know. And I'm a perfectionist too. So we were there for 4 days and we were filming nonstop. And honestly, when we left, I was disappointed. I was like, you know, we got great interviews, we got good B-roll, good drawn stuff. There's definitely a story there. But again, I had never produced, much less edited something to that magnitude and put it together. So it's like, something like that, you know, you don't have a script. Like I said, I come from a narrative background where you have a script and you know exactly what you're filming. You're working with actors and, you know, where scenes go. So it's just a huge jigsaw puzzle that is very intimidating if you've never done anything on that scale before. And so, you know, you just got all of these interviews, all this B-roll, all this investigation stuff, and it was my job to kind of mesh that together into a cohesive story, which again was very intimidating to do, considering I'd never done it before. So, long story short, I tried to treat it like a narrative movie and tried to do a timeline and make it make sense. But to go back to your point, skeptic. I was a skeptic going in, and you know, that's kind of a catch-22 because I definitely believe in the afterlife and all that, but I'm like, you know, and I was straight up with him. You know, you see these ghost shows and you see them scanning through the radio and these answers pop up, and it's like, how much credence do you actually give to that answer? But then the more you do it and the more you're around it, the more I film it, when you ask direct questions and it gives you, or specific questions and it gives you direct answers right after that, then, you know, you can't really deny that. So as far as I'm concerned, the way that I look at producing something like this or any of the other documentaries, which we've done quite a few others since then, or since Malefice, is I'm not trying to convince a viewer or someone who's watching our thing whether the paranormal are real or the ghosts are real. What I'm doing is I'm big on story of a location. Like with this one, it was weird because we couldn't find any true history of that location, so we just had to base it off of our investigations and things we'd heard and whatnot. But I'm big on, if we can go to a location, tell the true history, and then you get direct evidence that backs that history up and stuff, then that gives a lot of validation to those investigations and stuff. So going back, you know, all I want to do is tell a good story, tell the history, put the investigation stuff in there. If we catch something physical on camera or whatever, put it out there and let people can make their own researches. I'm not trying to convince someone one way or the other whether the paranormal's real or not. I just want to put out there what we got, and then you can make your own judgment. You know, I'm not trying, like I said, I'm not trying to convince someone. That documentary, for the first one that we produced for the ScareNetwork platform, I mean, it's probably the best one we've done. We've probably done like 20 of them in the last 3 years now, and
well, I think that story is really unique. It's probably my proudest paranormal film project because it's so personal to me, because it affected my personal life and me, and like it's been with me for so long. And to go down there and have, you know, this whole visual to my story. Now, typically you have, most of these times, people, documentaries or shows, you're just going to a house and you're trying to prevent the people from having these experiences in their home, just the activity, you know, and trying to, say for instance, if there's a demon legitimately in someone's house and there's an infestation going on, it's like you're trying to prevent the demons from really trying to get your soul, you know. But in this case, it's like, the demonic presence like had these souls for these women for whatever that reason I'll never know until my last breath. But it has something to do with something that took place on the spiritual plane somewhere, and it's like all these stakes in the spiritual realm. It's not really the location. It's like this unique environment that led us to going back there about souls being taken away from the devil that the devil had. I mean, think about, you know, taking souls away from the devil that the devil wants to get, but you're talking about souls who are somehow tormented and stuck and asking for help and screaming and, you know, help me, get me out of here. And it's kind of just really deep and spiritual on such a level that, in my opinion, is very unique, that stands out, you know, different than your typical paranormal story, so to speak. But, I mean, the evidence that we had so much evidence, we couldn't even put it in the documentary. If you probably saw, which I had briefly told you in the beginning, the reiteration of the words, you know, like the sexual assault mentions to the Mason. How many times does it say Mason in the freaking thing? And how many times does it say the demon's name, Mullet, associated with baby sacrifice? It said it over and over and over again. It was just like, and again, like just at the ending. That was so fulfilling to me, and I chills just talking about it, to have me have a vision in my bedroom of this shadow with horns in front of me and telling me there are rules. And I had no idea what the hell that meant. The only thing I could think of is this situation from that house, and how I may have helped these women cross over. And to actually, right before the exorcism, something come through the spirit box and say, the rules have changed. And I'm like, well, who changed the rules? God. I mean, if that's not profound, I don't know what is. I mean, that just validated, and they're talking about my vision and what this thing said to me. And let alone the mimicking, the voices that sound like Dave's voice and Eric's voice. I mean, this is what the demonic can do. They can mimic voices of your own, and, you know, if you're someplace and, you know, and it happens to you, it's definitely not a human spirit. But again, you know, even like the shadow peeking out at the end is just like, and again, those are on live streams. Those even are, you know what I mean? They were witness to that. Actually, the scream in my room, that was the second, now that's another thing, the screaming, to have the scream that happened in his room on a GoPro, that it is horrifying if you hear the scream in his room, because it sounds like that was the last moments of that woman's life before she was probably taken from this world, from this evil man. And then for that to happen in my room again, and then to have only one camera actually present that noise and hear it on the camera, it's just astounding in itself too. I mean, it's like a house of horrors of just like torture. I mean, like, you know, again, also to hear, I mean, obviously there was a lot of hearsay. I mean, we couldn't back up the history, but the paranormal evidence incorporated with what the curators were saying, and there's hearsay for many years that they really thought that this is what went on with the babies, and let alone when we're in the forest in the back. I mean, did you hear those like intelligent responses? They were guiding us. Oh, I'll take you, go over there. I mean, it's crazy. It's just, that's seriously mind-blowing, and unsettling all at the same time.
How did you find out about this house?
So my friend, he found out this place wanted some people to come investigate the haunting there. And it's really because of the place across the street. It's called Farnham Manor, and it's in Richfield, Ohio?
Yeah.
I think it's Richfield, Ohio. And we went there to investigate that place, but we were staying at the cottage. Now, it's funny. It's funny, this place was listed on Airbnb for like years, and before we went back, we're looking up the reviews of this, and I was like, God, this place smells like sulfur.
It did.
And I'm just like,
Stunk in there.
I don't think it's the water in this case, unfortunately. Yeah, we were there to investigate the manor, and the activity over there was just crazy, absolutely crazy. But I was drawn to where we were staying and the stuff that was happening there, and that's really, it ended up being a big part of the investigation. It wasn't across the street. It seems like that was the purpose of that.
Calling.
Yeah, somehow, yeah. And here I am talking about it. How many years ago is it now? Since I first went there? Well, since I went there, 5, 3.
Oh, yeah.
It's like 8 going on 9 years. It's crazy. And here we are in Masonic Lodge talking about Mason stuff.
In Amityville.
In Amityville, I know. Yeah. And, the Amityville thing too. I've got, weird things with that. I mean, were any of you guys at the screening last year? Okay. Okay, yeah. I mean, you can watch that documentary too on ScareNetwork. I don't know if it's all for free. You can stream it for free. We just changed the whole platform. So right now it's functioning on Roku, so you can download the app for free and stream all of our old content for free, and including this new series that we just put out. We're putting one episode out a week, actually tonight, just at 8 o'clock, the second episode, Darkness in Suburbia. Another very interesting story. A whole neighborhood in Jersey was haunted. It was built in 2020, and all these people's homes started having paranormal activity. Ends up that the history is that they built it on top of farmland where they were sending Japanese internment campies, and everyone's having crazy, weird stuff happen. Very interesting. We're bouncing around to a bunch of different houses. Very interesting, and there's 7 episodes of that. Second one aired tonight. In the next month, all the other apps that are out there, Fire Stick, Apple TV, and so forth, you'll be able to watch everything for free as well. Yeah, Amityville too. I mean, that's a whole nother story. Documentary we did too. I mean, even the last couple of days, weird things start happening every time I come, down here or start talking about that case too.
Question.
Yeah.
How can you sleep? I'm like, I would be a nervous wreck. Like, I don't know, how are you able to sleep?
I'll change your Michael.
Well,
Yeah. I mean, it's
Take a bath in holy water.
I got a water gun filled with holy water next to my bed. I'm so accustomed to so much at this point. It's as apparent as me inhaling, exhaling oxygen. You know what I mean? Like, I've experienced so much. So, like, yeah, I mean, even last night, something I felt came to me. I was, like, laying on my couch, and I felt something was under me and, like, weird. And I had a vision. I was looking out in my apartment, and, like, something sliced me. I just felt, like, blood, like, flying out. And I woke up with the chills. I'm like, yeah, I know what you're doing. He's trying to, the thing is that nightmares, if it's coming from a spirit, is that your subconscious is fully awake and your rational mind's fully asleep. So in this state, in this bracket of time, spirits know that you're most open to the spiritual realm. So they can actually telepathically influence and give you messages with your dreams and influence your dreams. And not just the evil ones, but also your loved ones. That's why I always tell people you have dreams about loved ones. They're most likely trying to give you a message. Been very lucky too. My dad passed away 2 years, just October 16th, and I've had so many experiences, and I've had dreams and visions and stuff like that. So, it's very comforting to have that. I mean, like I said, if you know evil exists, you know good exists. So it's not everything's scary. I think human beings are probably scarier than some of the demons I've encountered.
yeah, because, like, watching that, I was like, no, he's actually sleeping. I'm like, I wouldn't be able to sleep. And
Yeah.
she's like, what's that noise?
And
it's like the refrigerator going on.
Yeah, what's so funny is that I had taken a nap there by myself. It wasn't in the documentary, but I was so exhausted because we were coming from another location, which was the first place that you see in the first part of the documentary. Actually, we have a documentary coming out of that place in the coming weeks, Still Our House. Another really messed up haunted place. But I remember laying down, I just heard this voice next to me go, "You," and I smelled sulfur just like right up in my nose. It was horrible. Yeah, that thing is just really bad in that house. And there's still references that come through on spirit boxes and things about this case. There's things that come through about Amityville. Actually, I was investigating a couple nights ago and it said George Lutz. I was watching. So I'm like, all right, there we go. It's just how it goes. But yeah, I mean, it's something I wake up in my bedroom, I have holy water, I'm just like, skedaddle, get out of here, because I mean, these things, they want to mess with you, they want to make you fearful. If I'm about to go on a residential case to help somebody out, to try to like scare me off before I go, or if they're attempting to try to mess with you, get fear from you, they get energy from your fear. If you truly believe that God's more powerful than any devil, demon, or diabolical force, these things cannot do to you what they will ultimately want to do to you. But if they smell that on you, like a shark does to a wounded fish in the ocean, like a frequency flapping in the water, you're telling them that you're good prey. And they're going to come looking for some blood. But yeah, I mean, if you don't sleep, you're worn down. You're worn down, your vibration lowers, and you're more susceptible on their level for them to influence you even more. Oppression, they'll start to try to make you recluse, be off by yourself. You don't want to talk to anybody, because when you're by yourself, it's easily to get depressed. And that's where the whole psychological breakdown and attacks can take place.
Okay. And you think reoccurring dreams is spirit trying to tell you something?
It could be, yeah. I've had probably some of the most profound paranormal experiences while I'm in bed. I don't know if you know about like astral projection. That's something that's happened to me many times. I wrote a whole chapter about it in my first book. And by the way, if anyone's interested in books, I do have a bunch of books in my car because we're actually doing the Warrens event up in Connecticut this whole weekend. They're actually bringing a real Annabelle doll out for the weekend. That excites me.
Did you bring a giant tub of holy water?
You know,
Play with Annabelle.
the evil spirit from Annabelle followed me home one night too, and I have video evidence of that. The ghost stories are 10 lifetimes worth. Yeah, astral projection is really interesting. I was fascinated by it too. Your soul's attached to your physical body by something called silver cord, and you can actually end up going places when you sleep, and it's very tied into lucid dreaming. So also sleep paralysis. So sleep paralysis is very easy to associate. You feel like something's holding you down because you can't move. It's a very terrifying feeling. It is.
It's a horrible feeling.
It is because you feel like you can't scream. You just have your mind. That's it. You can't move, can't scream, and you're just, what's happening? It can happen naturally for you, and what I believe is happening is that your soul's shaking within your physical body, because once you actually leave your body and you come out one of your chakra points, your body will go into sleep paralysis. So when someone tells me that something's holding me down, I'm like, I try to ask them to say, did you see something? Did you have a vision of a shadow in your room or something on top of you? Because then I would be like, okay, I would associate that potentially with a third person influence of something doing that to you. But if it's just happening to you and you don't see anything, then it could just naturally be happening with you. But I've come out of my body many times. I've seen myself sleeping. I've looked in the mirror and I can see myself like translucent. I'll just give you one quick story. One of the crazier astral projections I had, really wild, is all of a sudden I was floating, and I was floating through church, and I could see my young self between 8 and 10 years old or something. And I had a mushroom haircut. I could see my dad with the big sideburns. I could hear the church music so vividly. And we locked eyes, my younger self and myself. And I'm floating towards the pew where I was standing next to my father. And all of a sudden I heard this echoing voice saying, Sean, you're going back too far. You need to come back. And I just felt sucked into my back of my body. And then I was like humming the church music when I woke up. Or even something really cool with, I'm sure everyone loves pets and dogs, right? Mm-hmm. So this dog had actually passed away, but really loved this experience. So my dog Seamus, he was laying in bed with me, and I had this vision that my dog was just in this beautiful open field running around, and his tongue was hanging out the side of his mouth, and just happy as a pig and shit. And all of a sudden, like, he just stops, and then there was this big like cliff that he could just run off. So he starts running, and then he just extends his legs and jumps off this ledge. And right as he extends his legs, he kicks me in bed, and then I wake up. And then I see my dog continuously running in the bed next to me. And I'm just like, there's no way that could have linked like that. I really truly believe we were both astral projecting, and I was watching my dog, run through this field. There's just no way. Nice little pretty story instead of all the stuff for a second. Any other questions?
I have another question, but
Yeah.
not if she's phobic. It's a real legit question. What is your view on Zach Bagans? Because I know he's like a hot topic.
I mean, I've never met him. I had gone to his museum. His museum's pretty insane. I had creepy dreams leading up to going and afterwards. The museum's very cool. I mean, I've been on some TV shows too, that's why I love doing what I do with Billy, because when you do these TV shows, like, you're just sitting there and rolling the dice, praying that the little reputation you have is not going to be thrown in the dumpster. You know what I mean? Like, because you have no control over anything. I mean, has a bunch of you seen 28 Days Haunted?
Yes.
I mean, you probably saw like the stupid moment where the guy's trying to claim I wrote on the mirror. It's like, it's just so stupid. But unfortunately, I ended up in a house with 2 skeptical people. And it's so funny that this guy is literally trying to accuse me of writing in the mirror, but then he's trying to use a spirit on the spirit box to call me out. Like, wait, you're a skeptic, but the spirit's gonna tell you that I can't come here? That doesn't make any sense, bro. Let alone like the guy who's looking in the mirror, which you didn't see on the show, and he's like, oh, my face turned into a baby. I'm just like, I could have been like, are you kidding? You know, it's some of the drama that goes on TV shows and some of the stuff that goes on. I seen the nonsense, and when there's a lot of money on the line, who knows what goes on? You know, when it's big. I mean, Zach Bagans is the most famous paranormal investigator out there. I mean, whether you like him or not, he's created an empire. And he's paved the ways for a lot of people to, I guess, to be interested in a way, maybe not in the best way, but I mean, I guess I still have respect. I don't like to judge people unless I meet them myself, because I hear there's so much drama in the paranormal field. It's nauseating. It's very draining. Like, everyone's fighting each other because Hollywood's melded into the paranormal. Like, if there were no TV shows, you'd probably see half these people going out and investigating the paranormal. They don't give a crap. I mean, even like, you know, there's a lot of people out there that were originally urbex people. Next thing you know, they find out there's a niche in the paranormal. Next thing you know, they're paranormal investigators, and now they're on YouTube going crazy. But you know, I try not to judge. I've never met her. Yeah.
Speaking of Zach, what's your opinion on like taunting the spirits and stuff in order to get a reaction?
Yeah.
But like extremely, not just a little.
Well, you know, again, if you see me in here, that's the only time that I provoke is to religiously have religious provocation. Is because even if I'm on a residential case, if they believe there's a demonic entity, I'm trying to force, like, say, the cockroach out into the open. These things do not want to show you what they're up to unless they're forced to. And that's why I say those things, and that's my intent. Intent is a very profound element in the paranormal. It doesn't matter if you say it or vocalize it subconsciously, that's your intent, and these things will try to manipulate that to their advantage. Now, in my opinion, if you provoke for the sake of entertainment or just to get a rise out of spirit, is that, again, like I was mentioning before, that's an invitation. So you're saying, do something to me. They don't have to do it to you tonight. They don't have to do it to you tomorrow. It could be months or years from now. Again, where you have no clue. It has anything to do with that one night where you said those words. Even Zach Bagans, I mean, the first time they went to Bobby Mackey's, I mean, he went and provoked, and he got those nasty scratches on his back, and they never showed it. They wanted to put it on TV, but right after that, he had to have an exorcism performed on him. And he probably stopped provoking after that for a while. You know, people start to get freaked out. I mean, it's not a game. It's serious business. And even on the Demon House, I mean, I've seen the documentary. His eyes got all screwed up from being in the house and you know, poking this thing.
I got a little nervous when your friend was by the stairs. I'm like, oh no, don't be talking to ghosts and playing by the stairs. That's how you get hurt.
Yeah. I mean, again, I try to do it from a way where I know I'm protected, and not just, if my intent is for entertainment or a rise, then I'm in trouble. They want you to say the right words so they can do what they want to do to you. That's what I kind of like brings back to that term that I always say, spiritual rules of engagement. They're just waiting for that open invitation. They're looking for a way in, because there's a lot of desperation with these souls. You know, they want acknowledgement. Acknowledgement gives energy to spirits. And that's why they go towards children, too. Children are fresh from the spirit world, and they haven't been contaminated by the rational perspectives of the way we perceive life in general. A lot of us lose our natural psychic gifts as children because our parents are telling us that our imaginary friends are not real, and they're not seeing and hearing stuff. It's also why I believe that later on in life, people see things in the corner of their eye. Like, they might see a shadow, but by the time they catch up to it, it's gone. Because I think your peripheral vision is actually not contaminated by the rational perspective. Your frontal vision is too. So that's why your natural gifts still might be in your sensory on the outside. But we all have that gift. And look at me, like in the middle of nowhere, my first night out of the cemetery, and like 2 weeks later, I'm like taking a ride on Falcor from the Neverending Story. So, I mean, like, here I am almost 14 years later. So, yeah, never a dull moment.
So, last question, I think, for both of you, if you can share, like, what was the scariest place you've been? And have you ever been like, nope, I'm out, I'm not going there? Like,
The ex-wife's house.
Well, there's a place that I wish we could have filmed at. It closed down. It was Revenant Acres. This place is so bad. I wrote about my first book. So my friends, who actually Dave was with me, and the other David, They told me about this place in Indiana. They're like, this is one of the most messed up places they've ever been. They've both been doing the paranormal for 30 years. And I'm like, okay. And my friend's telling me the last time he was there, he got thrown off the piano bench, and then he felt this big, huge pinch on his leg, weatherly. And he showed me a picture, and it was like a huge bruised bite mark right on his leg. It looked like a legit human bite on his leg. And there's a video on YouTube which you can watch. If you type in Revenant Acres Possession, you see this kid, and it's no fake YouTube nonsense. This is like legit. The guy's eyes are dilated. He's drooling at the mouth. He's contorting his arm, and he's saying like, "You're nothing." And he's like, "I am 7." This is something that would come through the entire time investigating, and other people have experienced. Actually, Eric, he had similar encounters at that place too. He even had a scratch mark show up in the back of his neck in the form of a 7. This thing would call itself a number, which is not the first time I've had evil spirits call themselves numbers. But yeah, we investigate this place, and we had the spirit box on, and so my friend's like, here, he handed me the spirit box because the energy off it was like intense. I'm like, what do you mean? So I hold the spirit box. Now mind you, there was 2 possessions. There was one that you see on video that looks totally legit, and there was a story of another one. So I don't know what to expect in this place. This is like 2014 or something. But anyways, I pick up the spirit box, and the energy was so intense, I literally felt half my body going to pins and needles, and I legit felt like this thing was trying to possess me. And I was like, no. And we had holy water in the kitchen area of this old farmhouse, and I just put it down. I'm like, dude, we gotta put holy water on, because whatever this thing is, it means business. I've never felt anything like that. It was like literally trying to get inside me. So I was putting holy water on, and then these guys are putting the holy water on, and there's this adjacent dark room next to the kitchen, and I'm sure most people have seen The Exorcist, right? You know that creepy white face that would flash? It's literally what it looked like in this adjacent dark room as they're putting the holy water on. I'm like yelling out, like, what the F is that? What's going on? He said, what? I'm like, dude, I just saw something. And then we had one of those devices that has the words on it. It was like devil, minion, beware, or something like that. And my friend's like throwing holy water all around the first floor of the farmhouse. And, back off, name of Jesus. And then we started to smell this like manure smell like coming out of nowhere. And then right as he was done, he never even realized his recorder was on in his pocket. And then we listened back to the recording, and he had this really creepy voice saying, "You better pray it burns," just like that. And then we were just like, what the hell? And we like took a break, went outside for a moment, like, okay, let's try one more time. So we go upstairs, and again, we're live streaming to this. Like I have the spirit box on, and I felt the pins and needles in my body again, like half my body. Like it was trying to, I'm like, in the name of Jesus Christ, back off. And I'm serious, like it felt as if like a truck hit the house, and the whole house shook, and we just turned off all the devices, looked at each other, like, did that really just happen? And then all of a sudden we start to hear footsteps coming up the stairs, and then like all this whispering. And at this point we were just like, we're just poking this thing, we were in trouble. Like, I mean, knowing that other people possessed, I mean, what else can we do here? Is someone gonna levitate? Like there I am with 2 other guys doing paranormal for 30 years. They've never left an investigation, and the 3 of us left that night. And for months afterwards, we continuously come through saying, "I am 7th in the spirit box." So there.
Yeah, real quick, I know everybody's ready to go, but just with what we've done, we went to this place in Texas called Yorktown Memorial Hospital. It's been abandoned for like maybe 30 years now, but it was opened in the early 50s and documented at least 3,000 deaths there. It was a hospital, and then it turned into maybe a mental facility and a drug rehab place. So just numerous deaths in those walls, and we actually had to rent it out one night, and we got it from like 7 at night to 7 in the morning, and it was freezing cold at night.
I couldn't believe we were in Texas and it was 30 degrees.
Yeah. So Sean and Eric were live streaming for a couple hours, and this is a huge building. They're off doing their thing, and then it's just me, and my job is to go around and get different shots of the place, B-roll, and again, even though I say I'm a skeptic, in that place it's so thick, add in the coldness and stuff too, and then you know, I'm going down in the basement where there was a documented lovers triangle murder, double homicide, suicide down there. Blood still on the, well, we didn't see it, but they said there was, you know, stained blood over there on one of the walls. But anyway, so I'm walking around this place by myself. There's no electricity in this place, so basically I'm just walking around with a camera light and another light, and you know, I'm just trying to get different shots of the different rooms, and you got dolls in there, baby cribs, and all kinds of just creepy old medical records. You can still see them in there. So I'm just walking around filming this stuff, pitch black, cold, and you could just, with me, I just felt like something was like right over my back the entire time, like just watching me. But I don't acknowledge it. I know that I'm there to do a job, and if I don't get the shots that I need to get, nobody else is going to get them. So I just try my best to just tune it out. But that was one of the creepiest places. And then and we ended up again, that whole documentary is on ScareNetwork as well. When we left, you remember Eric? There was a dead bird on Eric's car, like on his trunk, like just a dead bird that had not been there. So yeah, we ended up leaving like 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, we didn't have a team, but to capture all the stuff that I wanted to. But we were in the kitchen one time, and we clearly were hearing voices come from the entrance, and the doors were locked, and we thought someone had broken in. Remember, and all our gear and stuff was staged up front, so we started running up front because we didn't want our gear and stuff stolen.
Nobody in the town. It's freezing cold.
Yeah,
and
it's like 2 o'clock.
And it was the middle of the week. I mean, no one's out. Like, there was nobody. We looked all around the building. There's no one there. But
You
that's
hear
how
clear
that-
talking, and it was so freaky to hear that. But yeah, that place was just abandoned. Even in that kitchen we were at, there were still dishes in there, and it's just a really freaky thing, and you just feel the energy in there was just so thick. I wish it wouldn't have been so cold, and I wish we had, because we shot a lot that week, so we were kind of tired. I wish we had more energy and more time in there. We did the best we could with that, but I wish we could have done more at that place too. So anyways, that was answer your question.
All right, turn it off.